Today this could be the greatest day of our lives.
Sean Baker is one of the most consistent and uncompromising directors working today. The director of films like Takeout, Tangerine, and The Florida Project, he has been in the trenches of independent cinema for decades and has constantly produced gold from paltry budgets. His films, while fiction, are always heavily researched, and he often finds lesser experienced actors who can authentically embody the experiences of his characters. And through all his films, he has shown a deep curiosity for the lives of marginalized communities and a penchant for asking the audience challenging questions. It has made him one of my favorite directors. His latest, Anora, is a significant step up in budget, and the wider film world is finally taking notice as the film received the top prize at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year, and is even being talked about as a possible Best Picture winner in several months. Yet even with these larger resources and higher expectations, Anora is still a Sean Baker film through and through, delivering the incredible quality we've come to expect, once again tackling a story about a sex worker, and using her experience to examine the current state of the American dream. Mikey Madison plays the titular Anora, or as she insists, Annie, a Brooklyn stripper and sex worker. She's brash, alluring, and knows how to get what she wants. She also has a limited knowledge of Russian, so when the son of a Russian oligarch comes into the club, she's asked to take care of him. The young Vanya, played by Mark Edelstein, is instantly taken with Annie and her Brooklyn version of his mother tongue, and after a sensual, enjoyable night, asks for further favors outside the club. Annie takes Vanya on as a client, and over the next few days, she spends time having sex with him, watching him play video games, and partying hard with his friends. All the while, Vanya becomes more and more infatuated with the woman he has hired, and eventually, during an impromptu trip to Vegas, he asks her to marry him. After confirming that he's serious, she accepts, but she soon encounters the truth about the children of wealth. They are so often worth nothing without their parents. With an increased budget for Baker comes an even more exquisite visual landscape. The beautiful, expensive clothes and the luxury locations, including a mansion that was owned by an actual Russian oligarch, they're not only stunning, but Baker uses these trappings of the ultra-wealthy in an assault on our senses that grounds us in Annie's excitement for this relationship. Can any of us truly say we would not be tempted by the opportunity to obtain this lifestyle? The cinematography by Drew Daniels is equally exquisite. Shot on 35mm film, Daniels and Baker brilliantly use light and color to communicate tonal shifts as Annie and Vanya go from the neon-drenched party of carefree infatuation to the cold, stark reality of their true place in this class system. There is also a gorgeous blue hue that permeates the film, highlighting Madison's fair complexion and accenting her eyes, through which she communicates so much about her inner journey. The added budget also helps here, as it can be costly to shoot big set pieces on film, and Anora contains a 25-minute home invasion scene that is not only thrilling, but had me dying of laughter. Juxtaposed against her story is another extreme example of labor, Igor the henchman, played by Yura Borisov. A hired hand brought in to assist the oligarch family in annulling the marriage between Vanya and Annie, Igor is essentially a contract worker who gets into a job and is suddenly asked to do much more than had been agreed upon at the outset. What started as a job that would only take a part of the day turns into mandatory overtime that stretches well into the next day. Igor, for his part, is hilariously reluctant to play the part of the intimidating muscle, often going out of his way to be kind to Annie and even questioning the behavior of his superiors. Though he likely couldn't articulate why, he is drawn to her and seems to identify with her to some degree. Some of this is genuine care, some is likely longing, but they are also both workers, struggling for social mobility. And because of the nature of their jobs, the exploitation of their labor is more extreme. By pitting these two against one another, Baker shows the ways in which the ruling class uses the allure of their wealth, the financial precarity of the working class, the false promise of economic advancement, and worker competition to break class solidarity. Plus, in a nuanced and poignant conversation between Annie and Igor at the end, Baker shows us how the dynamics forced onto relationships between workers can engender distrust and lead to problematic situations. That is even more true for sex workers. Much of this also applies to the film's middle managers, Garak, played by Vache Tovmassian, and Toros, played by Karen Karagulian. Established overseers in the oligarch family's network, they are in closer proximity to wealth, better compensated, and given some power over the workers below them. But they are also tasked with taking on legal risks for their rich bosses, and stand to lose more if their position within the hierarchy is threatened. We see this in the brilliantly funny home invasion scene, where Garak slips on some ice while chasing Vanya and is scolded by Toros, who is at the same time being screamed at by Vanya's parents. Garak, pressing a frozen bag of dumplings against his broken nose, courtesy of Annie, complains about the occupational hazards they are taking on. And all because of the whims of the family's insolent failson, who can never seem to do anything that would threaten his place in the hierarchy. As the henchmen search the city for Vanya, with a reluctant Annie in tow, Baker further emphasizes the immense power these oligarchs hold over every facet of American life, from interactions with regular workers to the strings they are able to pull within the legal system. The Cinderella story we think we are witnessing for the first half of the film quickly reveals itself to be a sham, as Annie will never have a power of manipulation that can rival the ultra-wealthy. And, for as fun as this kooky adventure is, Baker ultimately leaves us with a cold, stark truth about the effects of all of this. That the American dream of one day I too will be wealthy is dead, if it ever existed. And the influence of extreme wealth that divides the working class has long, traumatic effects on our relationships with each other. I'm giving Anora 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is currently out in theaters.